Oh, looks like we're live. Let me turn up a little volume. What's going on, people? This is Levon coming straight from the Frank Honest home office, if you will. It's going to be a nice Thursday morning. Like to thank everybody for coming out. Even if it's just the two of us, it's just the two of us, just like the song. But check it out, though. Like I said, just wanted to come to you one time and kind of have a quick craft and conversation. Today's topic is Juneteenth 2020. For those of you who don't know, Juneteenth is a recognized holiday amongst the Black community. It represents the day that the last slaves found out that they were emancipated. Consequently, it was actually about 2 years after the original Emancipation Proclamation was delivered. But better late than never. And before you start, because I know I got a lot of smart people out there. Yes, I know that there were still people enslaved after that. And I also know that there's varying, stories about what date it actually was. I get it, but that's hardly the point. But like I said, Juneteenth is a not nationally, but amongst Black people, it's a recognized holiday. It's when we come together and we celebrate Black American life. As you can tell, with the current state of affairs, it's always hard to kind of celebrate Black life because there's so much negativity that goes into it that you actually have to look past that to find the good things. However, there are good things. There's actually a lot of good things when you actually take time to learn our history. Quite a few things to be proud of. I know a lot of times it's hard for us to be proud of where we come from. There's a lot of shame that comes with being a descendant of slavery. Nobody wants to admit that they come from a group of people who were essentially, forced to do labor, violated in all different kinds of manners. We don't want to look at our ancestors that way because naturally we'd want to ask, why would you put up with that? Why would you do that? However, it's a struggle and people do different things amongst that struggle. I mean, of course, during slavery time, you had people that, of course, you had enslaved people that would run away, would fight back. Of course, those stories don't get told, but it did happen. And yes, you had some slaves that decided like, hey, my life is more important than any of this stuff. Let me just do my thing, work these fields, come home and take care of my family. Like it's a hard decision either way. But unlike a lot of people, I will never begrudge the ancestors for working those fields and doing whatever they could to keep their family safe and alive. And also, on the other hand, I'll never begrudge anybody who ran away. A lot of times when slaves would run away, they would leave family behind. I mean, there's so many stories, but I mean, it's real talk. You would have, mothers, fathers. Sometimes if they saw an opportunity, they just left. Whatever family they had, they just looked up and was basically like, if there is a God, take care of them. I'm out. And I know that sounds a bit flippant, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I'm just explaining it in a way that people can kind of understand. But yeah, like I said, fathers, mothers, it wasn't too unusual for, like I said, if they had an opening, they would just leave, run away with varying degrees of success. But when you see that opportunity, sometimes they took it. And that was a part of that. However, I bring those stories up just to say that, hey, we did more than just tend to the fields. Some of us tried to get away. We tried. And like I said, Juneteenth is a celebration of Black life, and that's a part of it, the good and the bad. Kind of going back to slavery, that's where our tradition of hard work comes from. A lot of times Black people, there's a stereotype that we're lazy, we complain a lot, don't want to do work, all kind of stuff. But the fact of the matter is as long as we've been here, we've been the hardest workers and the least compensated for our work historically, even now. Even your Black friend that has a quote unquote good job, more times than not, he's making a lot less than his peers, his white peers. It's fact. It's fact. A lot of times you don't see your white peers' paycheck, so you don't know. But the fact of the matter is, yeah, there's a good chance that your white coworkers is making more money than you. They probably started with a higher pay than what you're making now. But once again, that's Black life. There's no need to be ashamed of it, but we do need to accept it and understand that it's real. But like I said, we have a tradition of hard work here, tilling fields, working hard, working in mines, working factory work. Like I said, Black people, we know all about hard work. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. I mean, really, poor people are like the hardest working people there is. How many people are working 2 jobs, 3 jobs just to make ends meet? That's hard work. A lot of people working 2, 3 jobs and don't even have a ride. They catch the bus from job to job. Well, what about their kids? Well, a lot of times kids have to raise themselves, or if you're lucky, you have a spouse or someone to help you, or grant a parent or somebody like that to help you. But obviously, if you have 2 to 3 jobs, your family life is going to sacrifice. However, we got to work hard. If you want to eat, that's what we got to do. And so this notion that Black people are lazy and all we want to do is live off the government and all that kind of stuff is false. We would work if we would get hired and be compensated for our work. A lot of times you'll hear it. People will say, well, yeah, you can always flip burgers. It's like it's already been proven many times that you can't live off a minimum wage. You can't. you just can't. And you shouldn't. The response to a person who works a full-time minimum wage job shouldn't be, oh, well, just get another one. Well, getting a job still requires that someone hire you. So your future is basically depending on the whims of someone more than likely who doesn't look like you, who doesn't have your same values. Let me just quit being nice. It's white people. Majority of Black college graduates, they get a job working at the government, because at least with a government job, they'll pay you a livable wage. However, if you work in the private sector, not so much. I mean, if you've been looking for a job, people out here with 4 years degrees, master degrees, out here, trying to get jobs that's paying you $12 an hour with a master's degree. That's wild. That's wild, But like I said, that's where we, that's the struggle that Black people find themselves in. And like I said, part of celebrating Black life is celebrating the dark side and the light. So yes, we understand that there's discrimination out there. However, don't let that distract you from the fact that we do in fact work hard. We probably work a lot harder than our peers for less compensation. But like I said, that's a part of the game. Here's another thing that we can be proud of as descendants of slaves, something that we can celebrate for Juneteenth. Black people, we have a rich tradition of music here in America. Sure, there's certain drum patterns and styles of music that have come from Africa, and we've been able to keep some of that. However, a lot of the music that Americans enjoy, it was created here on American soil. So yeah, spirituals, Negro spirituals, that was created right here in America by Black Americans, not Jamaicans, not Latinos, you know what I'm saying? And for the most part, not Africans. Yes, we come from Africa. However, the people that created the spirituals and the Negro spirituals, they were Black people who were actually born here. Okay, they may have had parents that came from Africa, great grandparents, maybe great grandparents that remember Africa still. However, spiritual music that came from here, obviously, because white people forced their Jesus on us. And this is no disrespect to my Black Christian friends. Like I say, I respect that perspective. I think I better leave it at that. I don't want to. I don't want to offend anybody. Not this early in my YouTube career. Uh, but yes, like I said, I do believe that Christianity has a place. But if we're keeping it real, it is a white person's religion. That's how we got introduced to Christianity. However, that Christianity mixed with our soul, so to speak, is what gave you spiritual music, which also gives you gospel. Those are genres of music that were established here in America by Black Americans. And we should be proud of that. So when Juneteenth rolls around, that's something that we can say, like, look, this is our contribution to America. Because don't get it wrong, other groups, they enjoy gospel music just like we do. You see what I'm saying? Like I said, we started it, so of course they gotta respect it. And so, like I said, that's something that we should hang our hats on and have pride about. But like I said, all and most music genres come from that Negro spiritual, because you got Negro spiritual, then you can go to gospel, then you can go to blues, then you can go to jazz, then you can go to rock and roll. All of these are genres of music that were created by Black Americans here in America. Once again, people of color can't make those same claims, and we shouldn't let them. And that's why I treat the term people of color and I treat the term minority like a slur. Don't include me into that. Not that I have problems with other groups. It's just that their history is different from mine. Not personal. I'm just kicking facts. So, like I said, you wouldn't, there's other genres of music like reggae, like Black Americans, we can't, we can't put any claims on reggae music now. As a lot of us know, if you listen to reggae, it's heavily influenced by Black American music, heavily. However, it still has this uniqueness that comes from Jamaica, and no one can take that away from them. And that's all I'm saying about genres of Black music. Is like, hey, it's something that was created by us, and we can take ownership over that. I mean, sure, we can't get paid for every piece of music that comes out. However, we can look ourselves in the mirror and be like, yeah, we made that. We made this music possible. We made rock music possible. So every white group that does rock music that has gone on to make millions upon millions of dollars, good for them. But we all know where they got the sauce from. The Beatles, ZZ Top, Leonard Skinner, Eric Clapton, what's the Hall and Oates, We've heard Michael McDonald. That's a man who listens to plenty of black people music. Amy Winehouse, rest in peace. This is a woman who obviously listens to a lot of black music. Christina Aguilera, yeah, a lot of black music she's listened to. So I say that to say we have a strong tradition of music. We need to be proud of that. And when Juneteenth rolls around, this is just something to kind of reflect on. What other contributions do we have? Oh, let's talk about food. Anybody like to eat? I know I do. Me and my wife, we're foodies. Before this pandemic jumped off, we'd be eating out at least twice a week. Like money ain't a thing. It is a thing, but we were eating like money wasn't a thing. But I say that to say we're foodies. So I tend to know a little bit about food, especially American cuisine. And so growing up as a Black American, of course, I know my way around soul food. That is a form of cuisine that was established right here in America. The fried chicken, mashed potatoes, collard greens, cornbread, mac and cheese, yams. All of that is Black American cuisine. Now you'll hear people say, "Oh, you can't take ownership over cuisine. You can't take ownership over a style of music." Yes, we can. It did not exist before we created it. Keep in mind, we created all of this stuff with little resources, by the way. The reason why our ancestors were able to learn how to cook collard green is because their masters are the ones that gave it to them because they ain't know how to cook it. They saw these big leaves and was like, "Dang, how do you cook that?" Yeah, but Big Mama knew. All she had to do is like, yeah, separate it from the stalk and cook it for a long time. Put you some salt poke in there, and you're gonna have a good meal. White people ain't know nothing about that, but when they tasted it, they was like, "Wow, these Negroes are on to something." Let me figure out how they make it so I can sell it myself. But yeah, like I said, that's that. We know soul food, and of course, soul food gets a bad rap these days because it's high in calories and fats and all that other kind of stuff, which is true. Yeah, it's true. But keep in mind, when it was originally created, the slaves needed a bunch of calories because they worked in fields all day long. So you needed them calories so you can burn them off. And of course, now our we're not as active. So uh, if we keep that same kind of cuisine and those same habits, of course, we're going to gain weight if we don't work as hard as the slaves did. And yeah, I said that, I know earlier in the podcast, I said that we work hard, which is still true, but we're not working in fields anymore or anything like that. So, like I said, the soul food will cause us to have, various health issues and things like that. And I mean, I'll let each person kind of figure out how they want to live their life. I mean, me personally, I'm not going to turn down some soul food so I can live an extra 5 years. I got to get mine. That's just me. But even outside of soul food, there's other cuisines that we've made. I mean, for instance, look at a lot of cuisine that comes from Louisiana, Creole. A lot of that is slave food. We don't realize it if you don't know your history, but when you eat gumbo, when you eat jambalaya, when you eat shrimp etouffee, those are traditionally Black dishes. They did not exist before Black people came to America. We created that out of necessity. I mean, just look at gumbo. It looks like a bunch of leftover food put in one big dish, which it is. But it tastes good though. Am I lying? Am I lying? Yeah. Black people, we been knew about shrimp and grits. Now you can go to a restaurant, pay $25 for for a bowl of shrimp and grits. And that's poor people food. That's why when we go to these restaurants and we see prices, we like, huh? You charging this for what? Why? Because we know this is poor people. This is I say it's poor people's food, but I say that in a sense of why are you charging $25 for something that we know it don't cost that much, and I get it, capitalism, yeah. But the fact is that our ideas have been hijacked and then used by other groups to make money. It's sad but true. However, we can still be proud of the fact that, hey, we created these dishes here in America. Um, and I don't think that should be glanced over. Like a lot of stuff that Black people are responsible for, we don't give ourselves enough credit. Now, granted, a lot of people don't know, which is why I'm trying to do this podcast, because I'm trying to educate not only Black people, but people of other cultures. So when you see us upset, going off on social media, going off in interviews, when you hear certain rap songs and be like, man, why is he saying that? I want you to have a context of everything. And so once again, we should be proud of our contributions as far as cuisine. What have other groups given us as far as American cuisine? Hot dogs, hamburgers, spaghetti, pizza. Okay, but it's not soul food. It's not what we create. So that's something to keep in mind. That's something to keep in mind. And another thing that we should celebrate, and this is kind of probably my biggest point here, as we see these peaceful and somewhat unpeaceful demonstrations over the last few days, you notice that there's more than just Black people out there. Usually when there's protests, there's Black people involved, and it's only Black people involved. We usually have to fight our fights on our own. But if you notice, this last time it's a little bit different. You start to see a bunch of different kind of people kind of getting in there. And I, for one, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I actually know why they do that, because the Black struggle is really the only righteous struggle there is. And by righteous, I mean, people always latch on to the Black struggle because they know we have a point. We have a reason to be mad. A lot of people protest, and I don't want to say they don't have a reason to be mad, but they always try to equate their struggle with our struggle because they know ours is a real struggle and that theirs may not necessarily be a righteous struggle. What do I mean? Okay. Maybe the first year of Donald Trump's presidency, there was a big to-do about him locking up people who would cross over the southern border, and he would basically detain them. Now, to the casual political commentator, we want to blame Trump and say, hey, he's a bad guy. He shouldn't be doing that. However, if we're being honest, Barack Obama was actually the one who turbocharged ICE. Matter of fact, he actually deported the most people out of all presidents. Every president before him, he deported the most people. So this kind of notion that he's a champion of the people, it's just not accurate. But like I said, that first year Trump, because of course Trump is the devil and all this other kind of stuff. So we just assume that he's the reason why people are getting locked up. And really all he's doing is continuing what's already been done by his predecessors. But I digress. However, like I said, I do think that it's wrong to lock up the immigrants that cross the border. If anything, just walk them back over. You don't have to detain them, but hey, I don't make the rules. However, keep in mind, they made a conscious choice to come here. They chose to come here like every other immigrant. And so a lot of times you'll have people of color say, hey, I experienced racism too. Like a lot of Asian Americans, because of the coronavirus and where it came from, Asian people are experiencing discrimination, name calling, that kind of thing, which is it's sad. Don't get me wrong. It's not right to do that. However, it's not like being black. That's something that black people we're used to that. That's not something new. Getting called names, people boycotting your business all because you look a certain way. Yeah, that's black life. That's black life. But the only difference is black people didn't choose to come here, whereas everyone else did. So if you choose to come here and you experience discrimination, racism, that kind of thing, you actually can leave. If you say, let's just say, hey, I'm about to come to America, start a business, do this, woo, 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 land an opportunity, you get here, don't like it, you got a place to go back to. See, black people don't have that. When we get beat up by the police, killed by the police, when we get discriminated against, when we get mass incarcerated, we don't have no place to go. You always hear people say, hey, you can always go back to Africa. Well, one thing, Africa is a continent, not a country. And there's over 50 countries on that continent. And despite what we may think, all of those countries don't get along with each other. There's a lot of tribalism in Africa. And so when we say, well, just go back to Africa, well, we don't even know where we come from. And that's part of the problem. Our ties to Africa have been severed to the point where there's no going back. I mean, yeah, you can go back to Africa, but you don't know where you come from. I mean, I never did the DNA stuff, so I'm not exactly sure how that works, but still, you don't know. We don't know where we came from. So going back to Africa is, I don't want to say it's pointless. I mean, I do get why people go back, but here's a news flash. When you do go to various countries in Africa, depending on where you go, as a black person, black American, you'll actually still be a second-class citizen over there. In certain countries, you as a black American, you can't own property. You won't be able to vote in their elections if they have them. Like I said, and even when you go over there, it's not, you're not going to be welcomed as family. They're not going to say, hey, we're the same. A lot of black people go over there thinking it's going to be like that. But when you go over there, they don't see you as brother, sister. They don't see you as African. They see you as American. And that's if they don't believe the stereotypes about black Americans, because best believe that a lot of Africans believe the same stereotypes that white Americans do. They believe that we're rowdy, we do drugs, we're lazy, we're always complaining, we don't take advantage of opportunities. A lot of Africans, they think that. And if you don't believe that, it's probably because you never talked to a person from Africa or from any other place. Because if you talk to them, that there may be some solidarity in there, but if you talk to them long enough, they'll start drawing boundaries. You know what I'm saying? They'll start drawing boundaries like, yeah, we look the same and that kind of thing, but they'll tell you it's different being African. And I agree with them. But the problem is that it's okay for other people to represent their nationalities, but when we do it, it's a problem. You see what I'm saying? So I say all that not to, like I said, not to bash Africa, not to bash Africans, not to bash Caribbean countries or anything like that. However, our histories are different. They're different. You know, a lot of times we want to believe that black people are in America because all of us was kidnapped from various countries in West Africa. But the fact is that you don't kidnap 50 million people from a continent without some type of collusion. What do I mean by collusion? Basically, I'm saying that sure, some people may have been kidnapped. However, more than likely, they were sold. Like white people came, or Europeans, however you want to say it, they came to Africa to buy slaves. They, you know, all of them didn't get kidnapped. And so, yes, there were Africans selling other Africans to other countries for money, gold. Oh, well, I guess that's the same. Sometimes trinkets. You know, some slaves got sold for like fabric, like silks. I've even read articles where like the kente cloth and certain quote unquote African patterns are actually from other countries. You know, and it's just wild the deeper you go into history, but you have to read it. And if you don't, you would just be out here thinking that, oh, well, 50 million people got kidnapped from Africa and that's why we here. That's not the case. The case was we were in fact sold. And so that's another reason why we can't do the whole people of color thing. How can we do a people of color when there's people that have benefited in Africa? They benefited from selling slaves. So how can we say that we're all the same? I mean, we just can't. So once again, our struggle is righteous because we're the only ones who never asked to come. And we've been on the bottom ever since we've been here. And we've seen group after group come here, get settled, and thrive. You'll often hear Italians say, hey, you know, in Europe, we were the black people in Europe. Irish people will say that same thing. Hey, in Ireland, we were the black people of Europe. And it's like, okay, historically, I can go along with that. However, when you came here, you started thinking like the oppressor and not the oppressed. When Irish people came here, they're trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I thrive here? Okay, I see that the people that's already here are disrespecting these black folks. So if I want to be American, I got to do the same thing too. Italians did that too. Not all of them, but I mean, historically, yeah. Gangs of New York. Like I said, everybody finds their own tribe, figure out what to do, and then just build from there. However, Irish people, Italian people, they didn't have to deal with the black skin. So, you know, they could come over here and be, I won't say they were welcome with open arms. However, you know, they were able to integrate into society based off of how they would treat and how they would look at the black people. These are facts. Once again, this is why our struggle is the righteous one. This is why everybody always tries to shoehorn their struggle into ours. You don't know how many times on social media people want to tell me I should understand their struggle because I'm black. Hey, you should understand the queer struggle because it's like being black. No, it's not. You should understand the undocumented immigrant. You should understand their struggle because it's just like being black. No, it's not. You know, you should also be fighting for women's right because women get treated just like black people. No, they don't. Black women do. Definitely not white women. We know that. White women have the second, like they hold the outside of white men. They're like the second wealthiest group. You want to know something real crazy? Now, affirmative action was established for black people. It was supposed to be a form of reparations. Because as countless studies have shown, if you give companies their own, if you let them make their own rules, they will never hire black people. So you have to incentivize it. You basically got to bribe these white companies to hire black people. And if that's what you got to do, fine. But like I said, affirmative action was established. It was supposed to be for Black Americans. However, as time kind of went on, other marginalized groups was like, hey, we need protection too. So something affirmative action that was established for Black people, the door started opening wider and more people could get in. So now you have Asian people that can take advantage of affirmative actions. Latinos, pretty much any immigrant from anywhere can take advantage of affirmative action programs. White women, white gay people, you know what I'm saying? Like all these different groups can take advantage of affirmative action that was made for us. Now, the crazy thing is that we know now historically that white women also own slaves. So imagine being a Black person and you're looking at white women take advantage of programs that was for us, knowing that white women also own slaves. So how can you be oppressed and the oppressor at the same time? That's the game. You see what I'm saying? That's why that's why you shouldn't let people shoehorn their struggle in with our struggle. Because like I said, other groups that didn't put in the work like we put in, they get the most advantage. So yeah, like I said, everybody wants to equate their struggle with our struggle, even though their struggle is nothing like being Black. And that's not to say that other groups aren't marginalized or don't experience discrimination, but you don't have to try to equate that struggle with the Black struggle. Normally with Black people, just generally speaking, we're more progressive than anyone, despite what you've heard. You'll always hear, Black men, they have privilege, they're chauvinistic, they're this, they're that. But in order to have privilege, you have to have some kind of power. And Black men have absolutely no power in this country. So you can't say that we have privilege just because we have a penis. And if you have any questions about that movie, Just Mercy, that's the movie with Jamie Foxx and Brian B. Jordan. That's a perfect example, because you see how it's different being a Black man versus being a white man, and the lack of power that separates people. So anytime you hear someone talking about Black male privilege, just tell them to shut up. They don't know what they're talking about. And that's just fact. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, our struggle's righteous. Everybody wants to be a part of it, which is why you have so many people during these rebellions breaking windows, stuff, because they're trying to latch on, because nobody would hit the streets like this for women's rights. I mean, the last women's right protest I seen was for Donald Trump, and all I saw was a bunch of white women smiling, and they had on pussy hats, taking selfies, smiling, talking about solidarity and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, that's not a protest. As you can see, nothing came about from that. Why? Because they don't have, the struggle that they were talking about is not legitimate. It's not. They were just upset that Hillary Clinton lost. Well, I mean, she's a part of that same system. So if she lost, it's because of the same system that she benefits from. That's why you have to be careful with feminism, because feminism benefits from patriarchy. And that's maybe we can do another podcast about that. But let's keep it real. Feminism is really a white woman's group. I know there are Black women in it, but I can also tell you from being an activist that I've been told many times that when Black women try to get involved with these groups, and try to be involved with demonstrations and stuff like that, they get pushed to the back of the line. They don't get listened to. Why? Because they're Black. You know, they don't want to, these feminist groups, they don't care about Black women's issues. That's why when Breonna Taylor died, you didn't hear any feminist group. Let me take it back. When Breonna Taylor was murdered, let me make that clear. When she was murdered, you didn't see, or you didn't hear a lot of feminist groups coming out denouncing that. Black people did. We came out like, oh, this isn't right. But with feminism, no, they were quiet. And the quote unquote Black feminists who really take after their white female counterparts, they want to turn it into a gender thing and want to say, oh well, we go through all this trouble when black men are murdered, but when Black women are murdered, nobody says anything. And that's just not true. That's just not true. I mean, when Breonna Taylor, when she was murdered, yeah, we all were up in arms. Now, it may not have hit the level of George Floyd, but that's only because George Floyd, we got videotape of that. And sometimes, maybe even most of the time, when you can actually see it, it's different than hearing the story. If we would have had pictures of the raid that took out Breonna Taylor, I'm pretty sure there would have been an outpouring, more so than it already is. But I say all that to say the notion that we don't leave out our Black sisters in the struggle, that's propaganda. We rose up for Sandra Bland. We rose up for Corin Gaines. We rose up for Charlene Lyles. But a lot of that comes from social media. Like, we don't have our own televised media, so we can't publicize the stuff like we should or like how we want to. But that's not our fault. The fact is we do know these stories. But, we can only share them but so much on social media. So, what can you do? But I say all that to say that, once again, feminist groups, when it comes to issues like this, they don't denounce. When the last time you heard them denounce the police? And if they have, I never seen it. So, until I do, I'm gonna just have to say I have to kind of just leave it at that. George Floyd, as we found out, two of those 4 officers that were instrumental in his death, they were people of color. I mean, I don't know exactly where they're from, but the names they seem to be Asian, and that's not to cast aspersions on all Asians, but the fact is I haven't heard any Asian groups denounce these killers. But Black people, we always got to denounce when a Black person does something or says something wrong, we always got to denounce them. We always got to put space between us and them. We have to, and most of us do. If we see a Black person doing some dirt or something like that, we'll be like, yeah, he shouldn't do that. We don't have a problem with that, contrary to popular opinion. Most people think that, I won't say most, but a lot of people think that Black people make excuses for troublemakers, and it's just not true. It's just Black people often find themselves in trouble that they didn't make. But there's so many stereotypes that nobody wants to believe it. It's always like, he must have did something. Police don't just kill people. Police don't just arrest people. He must have did something. That's mass incarceration right there. That should be the slogan for mass incarceration. Mass incarceration. Because he probably did something. That's where we're at. But like I said, we have a righteous struggle, and people always want to latch on to that. And this is just the latest iteration. However, one of the things that I did notice, and I will give props, is that people are really putting Black people in the forefront. And personally, I do appreciate that, because like I say, I talk to a lot of activists, and a lot of times we're always butting heads because we're trying to out struggle each other. It's like an oppression Olympics. Who got it? Who got it worse? Well, I already know Black people got it worse in every statistical category. So that's actually a short that's actually a short conversation. And so, like I said, I think that people are slowly but surely starting to realize, like, hey, maybe we should kind of take a break from what we normally focus on, and let's focus on this group who generation after generation have been discriminated against. And I think that people are finally starting to realize, like, hey, Black people can't help you with our struggle when we're the ones that need the help. Black people can't fight for queer issues when we're the ones that's being attacked the most. We can't fight for undocumented workers when we're the ones that are preyed upon the most. We can't help women with the issues that they have until we fix our problems. And that's what I mean by a righteous struggle, is that out of all the groups that you find complaining, we're the only ones we're the only ones who can say, like, hey, we didn't choose the life that we experience. Yeah, that's a way to say it. We didn't choose the life that we experience. We did not choose to come here. We have no place to go. There's no other place to go. And why would we? We built this country. Our roots are here. I can't separate, yes, I know that I'm essentially descendant of Africans, but you can really say that about everywhere because life began in Africa. So technically everybody's African. But like I say, the difference is with Black Americans, we have a rich history here. And for Juneteenth, we need to recognize that. And if you're putting on a Juneteenth event, if you really want to do it right, when you have music that's playing, it needs to be Black American music. Okay. When you're thinking about themes, it needs to be Black American themes, because that's what Juneteenth is about. It's not about collaboration of the different ethnicities. It's not a big block party for all nationalities. I mean, yes, we can all celebrate it, but Juneteenth is about Black American life and the celebration and the observance of that life. We have a specific history here in America, and we need to recognize that and celebrate that and make sure that all of our family and friends of all different colors and races understand that, hey, this day is about Black people, a celebration of Black life. All of our contributions to this country, I can't sit here and say, oh, well, we did everything, but America would be a completely different place without our contributions. Without our free labor, as our ancestors were slaves, without that free labor, America wouldn't be the richest country. I mean, you'd be rich too if you could start a business and not have to pay your employees. And then you'd be able to pass those riches down to your family, generation after generation, because don't get it twisted, that money that was accrued during slavery is still in circulation. It's still in circulation. Those riches didn't just die off with the people that made it. No, that we've discussed this. Wealth gets passed down generation after generation. And so if you were able to create wealth, you can pass it down. But on the flip side, if you weren't allowed to create wealth, all you can do is just pass down poverty. You see what I'm saying? And like I said, I don't want to, I spent a lot of time, in this podcast talking about the good and bad of Black life, because I'm the type of person where I don't think it's healthy to ignore the bad things and only focus on the good. Sometimes it's about understanding the darkness, if you will. That's why you can be more balanced and you won't have to do these mind games on yourself and to keep yourself balanced. Like a lot of anxiety and depression goes through the Black community. And a lot of that comes from not understanding where you are in America. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm doing these podcasts is, like I said, I want to teach. I also want to work on crafts. Once again, I didn't even get the color. I'm still working on it. But as you can see, there we go. Be a voice, not an echo. I'll be working on my crafts maybe next time. I'm not sure. But I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this podcast up. I done kept you long enough. Once again, I meant this to be only about 15 minutes. But once I start talking, I can't stop. So at any rate, this is probably going to wrap up this podcast. I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time out. If you can, make sure you share this with all your friends. If it's going to mess up your money, don't do it. I don't want anybody to lose their job because they're trying to wake people up. Just use it for yourself and just tell a friend what I just told you. If it's going to mess up your money. However, if sharing this does mess up your money, you got to do a little soul searching. Ask yourself, why is that? And if you can't share it, you kind of have to look at yourself. Are you truly free? If you can't share what you want on your social media platform, if you're scared that your white coworker is going to be mad or your white family members, you can't be scared. I get why. Like I said, I don't want anybody to lose their job, but that is something to think about. And until next time, I'll holler at you.